Everyone laughed at the waitress who fed a poor old lady, not knowing she was the mafia boss's mom. The noise of the elderly woman hitting the floor echoed through Crystal Palace Diner, turning heads and triggering snickers from the lunch crowd. Most patrons simply glanced up from their meals before returning to their conversations, indifferent to the scene unfolding by the entrance. Rose, a waitress of 3 years at the diner, dropped her serving tray on the nearest table and rushed toward the fallen woman. The woman's weathered face contorted in pain as she clutched at her ankle, her once elegant clothes now disheveled and stained from the fall. "Please, I don't need help," the woman whispered, her accent refined despite her shabby appearance. Rose ignored the protests, gently helping her to a booth, while other servers exchanged knowing looks about the crazy bag lady who occasionally wandered in. The manager, Carl, approached with a scowl that Rose recognized all too well. "She needs to order something or leave," he hissed, eyeing the woman's tattered coat and scuffed shoes with undisguised contempt. Rose felt her spine stiffen with quiet defiance. "I'll pay for her meal," Rose announced, earning an eye roll from Carl before he retreated to berate a busboy. The elderly woman studied Rose with piercing eyes that seemed to see through her worn uniform to something deeper. Rose brought soup and fresh bread without being asked, ignoring the whispers from her co-workers about wasting money on charity cases. The woman ate slowly, with a grace that seemed at odds with her appearance, occasionally glancing around the diner with calculating awareness. "Why would you help when no one else would?" the woman asked, her voice suddenly clear and commanding. Rose paused, caught off guard by the transformation in the woman's demeanor, as if a mask had momentarily slipped. "Because everyone deserves kindness," Rose answered simply, refilling the woman's water glass. A curious smile played at the corners of the woman's mouth as she reached into her worn purse and extracted a crisp business card. The woman pressed the card into Rose's palm, closing her fingers around it with surprising strength. "My son might disagree with your philosophy, but perhaps you'll change his mind too," she said cryptically, before rising steadily, her previous frailty nowhere to be seen. Rose watched the woman leave with confident strides, then opened her hand to examine the card. Embossed gold lettering simply read, "Blackwood Estates," with an address in the city's most exclusive neighborhood, and tomorrow's date written in elegant script on the back. Her heart raced as realization dawned. This neighborhood wasn't just exclusive, it was notorious. Even in her sheltered life, Rose had heard whispers about the Blackwood family and their iron grip on the city's underworld. That night, Rose paced her tiny apartment, the business card burning questions into her mind. Common sense screamed danger, but curiosity whispered possibilities, an escape from endless shifts, mounting bills, and the grinding predictability of her existence. Morning brought no clarity, only a strange certainty that ignoring the invitation would somehow be worse than accepting it. Rose called in sick for the first time in 3 years, dressed in her only interview outfit, and boarded the crosstown bus with the card clutched tightly. The bus driver raised his eyebrows when she requested the stop nearest Blackwood Estates, a rare destination in his route. "You sure that's where you want off, miss?" he asked, concern evident in his voice as he surveyed her modest appearance in the rearview mirror. Rose nodded, gathering her courage as the bus climbed steadily uphill toward a neighborhood that might as well have been another world. The streets grew wider, houses larger, until finally the bus stopped before wrought iron gates that seemed to guard secrets rather than property. The estate sprawled before her, a mansion of limestone and glass perched on manicured grounds that stretched into the distance. Rose approached the gate with faltering steps, suddenly aware of security cameras tracking her movement and the guard booth where a stern-faced man observed her. "Your name?" the guard demanded, his hand hovering near his jacket in a way that made Rose's mouth go dry. She managed to stammer her name and produce the business card, which the guard examined with widening eyes before making a hurried phone call. The gates swung open with silent precision, and a sleek black car emerged to collect her. The driver, expressionless in a tailored suit, opened the rear door without a word and waited for Rose to enter, as if her hesitation was anticipated but irrelevant. The driveway seemed endless, winding through gardens designed to impress and intimidate in equal measure. Rose caught glimpses of men patrolling the perimeter, their bulky jackets failing to conceal the weapons they carried with practiced ease. The car stopped before massive double doors flanked by classical columns, where the elderly woman from yesterday stood waiting. Gone was any trace of frailty. In its place stood an elegant matriarch in designer clothes, her silver hair perfectly styled, and her smile knowing. "Welcome, Rose," the woman said, extending her hand in greeting rather than introduction. "I am Victoria Blackwood, and you've intrigued me enough to earn an audience with my son." Her words carried both invitation and warning. The interior of the mansion stunned Rose into silence. Marble floors that reflected crystal chandeliers, artwork that belonged in museums, and staff that moved with the quiet efficiency of those accustomed to power. Rose felt like an intruder in a world built on secrets. Victoria led her through corridors lined with portraits of stern-faced men who shared the same piercing gaze. "My late husband," she explained, gesturing to the largest painting, "built this family from nothing, and my son has expanded what his father created tenfold." They paused before imposing mahogany doors, guarded by two men whose respectful nods to Victoria couldn't mask their assessment of Rose. "Remember," Victoria whispered, "my son respects honesty above all else, a rare commodity in his world." The doors opened to reveal an office larger than Rose's entire apartment, dominated by floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city below. Behind an ornate desk sat a man whose presence commanded attention without effort, Julian Blackwood, whose name was whispered in fear throughout the city. Julian rose slowly, his tailored suit emphasizing his athletic build, his face handsome, but hardened by experience. "So you're the waitress who showed kindness to my mother when she was testing the character of our city," he stated, his voice cultured but carrying an edge that raised goosebumps on Rose's arms. "I merely did what anyone should have done," Rose replied, finding courage in truth, despite the power imbalance hanging heavily between them. Julian's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. Surprise, perhaps, at directness where most offered deference. Victoria watched the exchange with calculating eyes before touching her son's arm gently. "She doesn't know our world, Julian, but she has qualities it desperately needs," she murmured, the loaded statement hanging in the air between mother and son. Julian circled Rose like a predator, assessing unexpected prey, his questions rapid and probing, about her life, her family, her dreams, until Rose felt transparent under his gaze. "Everyone has angles and agendas," he finally stated. "Yet I'm struggling to find yours. I need someone with your unique perspective," Julian announced, his decision apparently made. Someone the outside world underestimates, someone who sees people clearly, yet remains unseen herself. Rose felt her world tilting on its axis as he outlined his proposition. The position he offered seemed simple on the surface, companion to his mother, whose recent health concerns required attentive care. The salary he named casually would take Rose years to earn at the diner, yet she sensed complications beneath the straightforward arrangement. "This isn't charity," Victoria interjected, reading Rose's hesitation correctly. "My son's enemies are numerous, his allies few, and genuine loyalty is the rarest commodity in our circles. I believe you possess it intrinsically." Rose found herself agreeing, despite the warning bells in her mind, seduced not by luxury but by purpose, to matter in a way that serving endless coffee never allowed. Julian's handshake sealed their agreement, his grip lingering as if measuring her resolve. "First rule," Julian stated as they toured the east wing where Rose would reside, "never enter the west wing without explicit invitation." His tone brooked no argument, and Rose nodded her understanding while cataloging the security keypads and cameras throughout the mansion. Victoria explained Rose's daily duties with brisk efficiency, overseeing medication, accompanying her to appointments, and providing companionship during Julian's frequent absences. The underlying message became clear. Rose was both caretaker and confidant in a world where trust was currency. "You'll meet the household staff tomorrow," Julian informed her as they returned to his office. "Some have served my family for decades. Others are more specialized in their loyalties and talents." The implication hung unspoken. Some were family retainers, others enforcers. That evening, Rose sat alone in her new suite, surrounded by luxury that felt foreign against her skin. A wardrobe filled with clothes in her exact size awaited her, along with a smartphone programmed with necessary contacts and a discreet panic button disguised as jewelry. Sleep eluded her as voices drifted through the mansion's ventilation system, urgent conversations in Italian, mentions of shipments and territories, and a name repeated with venom, Cardelli. Rose realized she had stepped into not just a household but a kingdom at war. The following morning brought her first encounter with the inner circle during breakfast. Julian's consigliere, a silver-haired man introduced only as Monroe, his head of security, a scarred giant called Hector, and his cousin Francesca, whose beauty couldn't mask her open hostility toward Rose. "Another stray my aunt has collected," Francesca remarked dismissively, her diamond-adorned fingers tapping impatiently against fine china. "How long until this one discovers she's out of her depth, Uncle Monroe?" The challenge hung in the air like poison. Victoria entered with perfect timing, her appearance silencing Francesca instantly. "Rose represents something this family has forgotten," she announced to the table at large, her authority unquestioned despite her age. The strength found in compassion rather than fear. Julian arrived last, the conversation shifting seamlessly to business matters coded in seemingly innocent phrases. Rose observed the dynamics with quiet attention, noting how power flowed around Julian like gravity, how loyalty manifested differently among his lieutenants. Monroe pulled Rose aside after breakfast, his grandfatherly demeanor at odds with the shrewd assessment in his eyes. "The Cardelli family will learn of your existence by nightfall," he warned. "They watch us as we watch them, a dance decades in the making. Learn these faces," Hector instructed later, showing Rose photographs of stern-faced men with cold eyes. "The Cardellis will test boundaries, probe weaknesses, and a new face in the Blackwood household represents both opportunity and threat to them." Weeks melted into a routine that slowly revealed the true nature of the Blackwood empire to Rose. By day, Julian managed legitimate businesses, shipping companies, real estate holdings, and tech investments that employed thousands across the city. Nights transformed him into something else entirely. Meetings in private rooms with politicians seeking favors, police captains pocketing envelopes, and business rivals negotiating uneasy truces. Rose glimpsed this world in fragments as she fulfilled her duties to Victoria. "They respect strength, but fear loyalty," Victoria confided during their late-night tea ritual, when the mansion grew quiet, except for the security teams patrolling the grounds. "Julian has the former in abundance, but struggles to recognize the latter." Rose found unexpected purpose in her role, advocating for household staff when Julian's temper flared, softening Victoria's more imperious demands, and gradually earning respect from even the most skeptical security personnel. She became a bridge between worlds. The West Wing remained forbidden territory until one stormy night when screams echoed through the mansion. Rose found Julian in his private study, thrashing in the grip of a nightmare that stripped away his carefully constructed control. "My father died in my arms," Julian confessed after Rose woke him, his defenses temporarily lowered by exhaustion and the strange intimacy of darkness. Cardelli assassins. They waited until he was with his grandson, ensuring the child witnessed everything. Something shifted between them that night, a trust born from vulnerability rather than power. Julian began including Rose in meetings about the legitimate side of his businesses, valuing her outsider perspective and unflinching honesty where yes-men had previously dominated. Victoria watched this evolution with knowing eyes, occasionally catching Rose's gaze across dinner tables with subtle nods of approval. "You see him as a man, not a throne," she remarked one evening, as they watched Julian swimming laps in the indoor pool, his powerful strokes betraying inner turmoil. Rose discovered the family archives one rainy afternoon while helping Victoria organize old photographs. Tucked away in leather albums were images of Julian as a laughing child, Victoria as a breathtaking young bride, and the notorious patriarch whose legacy shaped their present. "My husband built this empire from nothing," Victoria explained, tracing the stern face in the photographs. His father arrived on these shores with empty pockets but skilled hands, facing discrimination that closed legitimate doors and opened shadowed ones instead. The oldest album contained sepia-toned photographs of Sicilian villages, immigrants huddled on ships, and stone-faced men standing proudly before newly established businesses. "Our history isn't just about power," Victoria sighed, "but survival transformed into dominance." Each photograph revealed another layer of the complex family Rose now orbited, christenings alongside business dealings, celebrations intertwined with strategic alliances, and always the shadow of violence lurking at the edges of even the happiest occasions. Julian was meant for a different path, Victoria confessed, showing Rose college acceptance letters and academic awards hidden among the family memorabilia. Princeton scholarship, dreams of becoming an architect, all abandoned after his father's murder. Rose began to see Julian not just as the feared kingpin, but as a man trapped by circumstance and duty, his intelligence and creativity channeled into maintaining an empire he never wanted to inherit. The revelation created an unexpected empathy that complicated her feelings. That night, Julian sought Rose out on the mansion's terrace, a rare bottle of wine in hand and questions in his eyes. "What did my mother show you?" he asked, his tone attempting casualness but missing by crucial degrees that revealed his vulnerability. Francesca's animosity toward Rose escalated as Julian's trust in the former waitress grew. Whispered conversations ceased when Rose entered rooms, and security personnel began escorting her more vigilantly between the mansion's wings after a misplaced kitchen knife narrowly missed her. "Watch Francesca," Monroe warned Rose discreetly during one of their now regular chess matches in the garden. "Her father was passed over for leadership when your boss's father chose Julian instead. Old wounds that never properly healed." Victoria's health suffered a setback that required hospitalization, leaving Rose to navigate the mansion's dangerous currents alone. Julian's increased absences coincided with rumors of Cardelli family movements in territories previously controlled by the Blackwoods. Rose discovered the listening device planted in Victoria's bedroom purely by accident, a tiny microphone disguised as a decorative button on a cushion. Instead of reporting it immediately, she began feeding it carefully crafted misinformation during one-sided conversations with the absent Victoria. Hector caught her in the act, his expression shifting from suspicion to grudging respect as Rose explained her counterintelligence strategy. "You have instincts," he acknowledged, his usual terseness giving way to something approaching warmth as he showed her other surveillance methods employed against the household. Julian returned from a 3-day absence with a bruised jaw and haunted eyes, summoning his inner circle for an emergency meeting from which Rose was pointedly excluded. The raised voices behind closed doors suggested fractures in alliances previously thought solid. That night, Monroe suffered symptoms of poisoning during dinner. Swift intervention by security rushing him to a private doctor prevented tragedy. Analysis of his wine glass revealed traces of a rare toxin accessible only to those with specialized connections. Julian's rage manifested in a household lockdown that confined everyone to their quarters while his security team conducted interrogations. Rose alone was permitted freedom of movement, her status as relative newcomer paradoxically placing her above immediate suspicion. "Someone believes I trust you implicitly," Julian explained when Rose questioned her exemption from restrictions. "They're baiting me to either doubt you unnecessarily or overlook a true threat elsewhere. It's a classic diversion tactic I won't fall for." The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Victoria's personal driver noticed unusual activity at Francesca's private apartment in the city. Surveillance footage revealed clandestine meetings with Paolo Cardelli, the youngest son of the rival family's patriarch. Julian received this information with dangerous calm rather than explosive anger, strategically reassigning security personnel while maintaining a facade of normalcy. "The best trap is one the prey doesn't recognize until it's sprung," he explained to Rose during a seemingly casual garden walk that covered blind spots in the mansion's security cameras. Rose's morning tea ritual with Victoria, who had returned from the hospital, was interrupted by the arrival of an unexpected gift, a designer dress with an invitation to the governor's annual charity gala. The handwritten note from Julian indicated both of them would attend. "It's not just a social occasion," Victoria clarified, inspecting the midnight blue gown with expert eyes. "It's a declaration. Bringing you into public view means Julian considers you essential to his inner circle." The unspoken implications hung heavily between them. Francesca appeared uncharacteristically helpful in the days leading up to the gala, offering Rose advice about etiquette and introducing her to the family's longtime stylist. Each seemingly generous gesture carried undercurrents of assessment, as if measuring Rose for eventual destruction. The night before the gala, Rose overheard a cryptic phone call in Italian from Francesca's suite, her limited understanding of the language still sufficient to recognize words for tomorrow, governor, and security gap. Sleep eluded her as possibilities swirled like approaching storm clouds. Rose debated warning Julian immediately, but caution prompted her to investigate further, before potentially exposing Victoria to danger with false accusations against her niece. The household safe in Julian's study, off-limits yet tantalizingly accessible during his morning swim, beckoned with answers. The safe yielded documents detailing offshore accounts with Francesca's name linked to Cardelli Holdings, a financial trail of betrayal dating back months. Rose photographed everything with trembling hands, the weight of her discovery crushing any remaining doubt. Julian received her evidence with stone-faced silence, examining each document methodically before meeting Rose's gaze. "You accessed my private safe without permission," he stated finally, his voice devoid of emotion in a way that chilled her more than outright anger would have. "I would betray your trust to protect your life," Rose countered, refusing to lower her eyes despite the fear coursing through her veins. Punish me if you must, but act on this information before tonight's gala becomes a slaughterhouse." Something shifted in Julian's expression. Not forgiveness, but recognition of something essential in Rose's character. "You understand the real currency of my world," he observed quietly. "The impossible choices that define us more than our successes ever could." The plan formed rapidly. Julian, Rose, and a trusted security detail would proceed to the gala as scheduled, maintaining the illusion that Francesca's betrayal remained undiscovered. Victoria would secretly relocate to their lakeside property with Monroe, who had recovered sufficiently to oversee her safety. "Why continue with the gala at all?" Rose questioned as she was fitted with a concealed panic button disguised as a bracelet. Julian's answer came with chilling pragmatism. "Spring the trap, but control when it closes and on whom." The governor's mansion transformed into a glittering battlefield that evening. Champagne flowed while security teams communicated through discreet earpieces. Political power brokers mingled with underworld figures in tuxedos, and Rose entered on Julian's arm like a debutante into a deadly chess match. Francesca's surprise at seeing Rose adorned in family jewels quickly transformed into calculated charm. "Victoria's pearls suit you," she commented, fingers brushing the necklace in a gesture that seemed appreciative but felt predatory. "Family heirlooms should be worn by those who truly understand their value." Paolo Cardelli made his appearance during the second champagne course, his handsome features arranged in diplomatic neutrality as he approached their table. Julian rose to greet him with the practiced ease of longtime adversaries maintaining public civility. The coded conversation between the men, pleasantries layered with threats, compliments containing warnings, provided cover for Rose to observe their surroundings. The catering staff included 3 men, whose rigid postures and vigilant eyes betrayed military training rather than service experience. The orchestra's transition to a waltz provided Julian the opportunity to guide Rose to the dance floor, where conversation could occur without observation. "Northeast exit through the kitchen, when I give the signal," he murmured against her ear, his hand at the small of her back projecting romantic intimacy rather than strategic planning. Rose spotted the first gunman reaching into his jacket as the governor approached their position. Time compressed into crystallized clarity as she registered Julian's blind spot, the security team's attention diverted by Francesca's dramatic accident with a champagne tower, and the fraction of second separating the present from tragedy. Her decision required no thought. Rose threw herself toward the governor, her momentum carrying both of them down as gunfire erupted above them. Pain blossomed across her shoulder, warm wetness spreading beneath the midnight blue silk as chaos engulfed the ballroom. Julian's voice penetrated the haze of pain and adrenaline, his face appearing above hers with an expression she'd never witnessed before, raw fear untempered by calculation. "Stay with me," he commanded, applying pressure to her wound as security formed a protective circle around them. "That bullet was meant for me, not you." The private hospital suite hummed with medical equipment and whispered conversations outside guarded doors. Rose drifted between consciousness and fevered dreams, catching glimpses of Julian's silhouette against window blinds and Victoria's worried face above hers. Recovery brought clarity and revelations as Julian maintained a near-constant vigil by her bedside. "The Cardellis believed you were my weakness," he explained during one lucid moment, "but they miscalculated. You became my strength instead." Police reports officially documented the incident as attempted assassination of the governor by extremists, with Rose heralded as a civilian hero who acted on instinct. Behind closed doors, a different justice unfolded in the shadow world, where Blackwood law superseded legal systems. Francesca disappeared from public view entirely, her fate unspoken, but understood in the grim satisfaction that occasionally crossed Julian's face when her name arose. Paolo Cardelli likewise vanished, though international banking alerts suggested a hasty relocation to non-extradition territories. Victoria arrived one morning bearing a velvet box containing the family's most treasured heirloom, a diamond pendant passed through generations to women who had defended Blackwood blood at personal cost. "Some family bonds transcend birth," she stated, fastening it around Rose's neck with ceremonial solemnity. The media frenzy surrounding Rose's heroism created unexpected complications. Her photograph appeared in newspapers nationwide, her humble origins as a waitress romanticized into modern Cinderella narratives. Julian's security team worked overtime to manage the sudden visibility of a woman previously valued for her anonymity. Nightmares plagued Rose's recovery, not of gunfire and blood, but of the moment of decision, the weight of choosing one life over potentially many. Julian found her one night on the hospital suite's balcony, tears streaming silently down her face as she confronted the burden of survival. "The first life you take changes you," he acknowledged, misinterpreting her tears. The quiet correction, that she mourned not taking life, but accepting its value, including her own, shifted something fundamental between them. Understanding replaced assumption, revealing depths previously unacknowledged. Rose returned to Blackwood estate under increased security measures, her status within the household fundamentally altered. Staff who had once viewed her with suspicion now offered deference bordering on reverence, while Julian's business associates assessed her with new calculation. "They're recalibrating their understanding of power," Monroe explained during their resumed chess games, his recovered health a testament to Blackwood medical resources. "You demonstrated loyalty that can't be bought, the rarest commodity in our circles." Victoria's health improved dramatically once family threats stabilized, her focus shifting to Rose's integration into legitimate Blackwood enterprises. "Your perspective as an outsider reveals blind spots in our operations," she noted, reviewing charitable foundation reports that Rose had instinctively questioned. Julian gradually included Rose in strategic decisions that extended beyond security concerns into business territories. Her suggestions regarding employee welfare programs improved workforce loyalty at key manufacturing facilities, while her ethical boundaries challenged long-established practices within the organization. The Cardelli patriarch requested a meeting exactly 1 month after the failed assassination attempt. Neutral territory, limited security, a conversation between equals seeking resolution rather than continued bloodshed. The request arrived with a white flag and ancient Sicilian tokens signifying truce. Julian's inner circle debated the proposal for hours in his study, opinions divided between opportunity and potential trap. Rose remained silent until directly asked, then offered perspective that cut through strategic complications to ethical clarity. Meet him, but from position of strength rather than vengeance. The night before the scheduled meeting, Julian sought Rose in the mansion's library where she had been researching family histories seeking patterns in generational conflicts. "Whatever happens tomorrow reshapes the future for both families," he acknowledged, the weight of dynasty heavy in his voice. "I need clarity only you seem capable of providing." The meeting location, an abandoned cathedral repurposed as neutral territory, embodied centuries of power transitions. Stained glass filtered sunlight across marble floors, where both families' security teams maintained precise formation, weapons visible but lowered in reluctant truce. Ancient wooden pews had been arranged in a semicircle, creating a council chamber reminiscent of old-world traditions where enemies could speak face-to-face. Monroe had explained the significance to Rose during the drive. Neutral sacred ground had historically provided sanctuary even for blood feuds. The cathedral's faded frescoes depicted biblical scenes of reconciliation and judgment, their weathered faces seeming to watch the proceedings with centuries of witnessed human folly. Rose noticed Julian glancing upward occasionally, his expression betraying rare moments of spiritual contemplation amid tactical considerations. Hector positioned Rose slightly behind Julian, but with clear sightlines to all entrances, her newly elevated status reflected in this protective formation. Her shoulder wound, still healing beneath designer silk, throbbed with each heartbeat, as if keeping time with the tension filling the sacred space. Salvatore Cardelli entered with dignity befitting his 70 years, supported by his remaining loyal son, but walking under his own power despite recent health struggles. His eyes, sharp despite age, found Rose immediately among Julian's entourage, assessment giving way to unexpected recognition. "The waitress who showed kindness to a stranger," he stated in heavily accented English, addressing Rose directly rather than Julian. "My wife spoke of you before her passing, a kindness freely given when she tested our city's character in disguise." The revelation stunned both families into silence. Victoria and Salvatore's wife, matriarchs of rival empires, had independently recognized something valuable in Rose's inherent compassion. What began as Victoria's test had inadvertently mirrored a similar assessment by her greatest rival. Negotiations progressed with careful formality, territories redrawn and restitutions established for transgressions on both sides. Rose observed the diplomatic dance with growing understanding of its historical context, not just business disputes, but generations of misunderstandings calcified into hatred. "My son acted without authority," Salvatore acknowledged, addressing Paolo's conspiracy with Francesca. "Family loyalty redirected toward personal vendettas serves neither our houses." The admission cost him visible pride, but earned grudging respect from Julian's advisors. Victoria arrived midway through negotiations despite medical advice to remain at the estate. Her entrance transformed the atmosphere from cautious diplomacy to something approaching genuine reconciliation, as she and Salvatore acknowledged decades of unnecessary conflict with the wisdom of survivors. "We fought over territories while our true enemies gathered strength elsewhere," Victoria observed, referencing emerging criminal organizations exploiting the vacuum created by traditional family rivalries. "Division weakens us all when unity would preserve what our husbands built." Rose witnessed the framework of peace take shape through careful word choice and symbolic concessions. Fishing rights returned to Cardelli control, Blackwood shipping lanes opened to mutual benefit, and most significantly, a council established where future disputes could be resolved without bloodshed. The agreement required blood oath from both patriarchs, an ancient Sicilian tradition blending Catholicism with older traditions. Rose watched Julian prick his palm without hesitation, mingling blood with his former enemies while reciting promises in a language older than the families themselves. Afterward, in the cathedral's garden where security maintained discreet distance, Salvatore approached Rose directly. "You remind me of someone," he stated, studying her features with intensity that bordered on discomfort. "A daughter I lost to illness decades ago. The same spirit that sees beyond surfaces to truth beneath." The drive back to Blackwood Estate passed in contemplative silence, the implications of peace reverberating through Julian's usually stoic demeanor. "Generations of hatred undone because a waitress showed kindness to a disguised matriarch," he finally remarked, wonder replacing cynicism in his voice. Victoria waited in the grand foyer, anxious despite constant updates from security channels. The transformation on her face when Julian entered, peace agreement secured, revealed decades of burden lifting from her shoulders. "It's done then," she stated, tears gathering, but not falling. That evening, the household celebrated quietly but genuinely. Vintage wine from pre-conflict eras, stories shared without strategic omission, and planning for legitimate business expansions previously impossible under constant threat. Rose observed the transformation with quiet satisfaction, her place in this new world undeniably established. The conversation turned inevitably to the future, alliances to nurture, businesses to legitimize, and the gradual shift from shadow economies to transparent enterprises. "The transition requires someone who understands both worlds," Victoria noted, her gaze resting meaningfully on Rose. "Someone who embodies compassion and strength in equal measure." 6 months transformed Blackwood Enterprises under Rose's growing influence. Charitable foundations expanded with genuine impact rather than tax advantages. Employee policies restructured to build loyalty through opportunity rather than fear, and community investments creating goodwill previously unimagined. Julian's gradual withdrawal from certain territories created space for legitimate businesses to flourish, transforming warehouses that once housed contraband into community centers and workforce development facilities. Rose oversaw each transition, ensuring former employees found placement in new ventures. "You're dismantling and rebuilding simultaneously," Monroe observed during a strategic planning session, his decades of experience lending weight to the assessment. Few leaders possess the vision to transform, rather than simply destroy or preserve. The annual charity gala, hosted by Blackwoods rather than attended, showcased the family's evolution to curious socialites and business leaders. Rose moved confidently through crowds that once would have intimidated her, her background now a strength rather than liability in connecting with diverse attendees. Victoria's health stabilized enough for limited travel, allowing her to visit Sicily for the first time in decades. Rose accompanied her to ancestral villages, where old women crossed themselves in recognition of Blackwood features blended with genuine warmth previously absent from family representatives. "They remember when our family provided protection rather than demanded it," Victoria explained as villagers welcomed them with unexpected affection. "You've reminded Julian of our original purpose, guardians rather than exploiters of our community." Rose discovered her own leadership style during Victoria's absence. Direct but compassionate, demanding excellence while providing necessary support, and uncompromising on ethics while practical about implementation timelines. Julian watched her evolution with appreciation rather than jealousy. The Cardelli alliance strengthened through collaborative ventures in international shipping, creating legitimate pathways for both families to transition questionable assets into transparent enterprises. Weekly meetings between former rivals gradually transformed into genuine business partnerships built on complementary strengths. The diner where everything began, underwent renovation as Rose's first personal project, transformed into a community culinary school, offering second chances to those society had dismissed. Carl, her former manager, ironically applied for a position, unaware of the ownership connection until Rose herself conducted his interview with gracious professionalism that left him speechless. Salvatore Cardelli's health declined rapidly despite the peace, prompting Julian to arrange specialized medical care without hesitation or expectation of reciprocity. The gesture cemented trust between families more effectively than any formal agreement, demonstrating evolution from transactional thinking to genuine human concern. Christmas brought an unprecedented gathering, both families sharing tradition in Blackwood Estate's grand dining room, where armed guards once stood, now replaced by waitstaff serving mulled wine. Victoria and Salvatore exchanged stories of their deceased spouses with surprising warmth, healing wounds through shared memories of those whose conflicts they had inherited. Investigation into Francesca's betrayal revealed deeper wounds than simple greed. Journals discovered in her abandoned apartment documented a lifetime of perceived slights and jealousies, directed particularly toward Julian's succession. Rose advocated for rehabilitation rather than permanent exile, recognizing damaged humanity beneath treacherous actions. Compassion doesn't equate to foolishness, she clarified, when questioned about this unexpected mercy. Monitored redemption serves our interests better than creating martyrs or perpetuating cycles of vengeance that wounded both families for generations. Julian sought Rose's company increasingly beyond business contexts, their evening conversations in the mansion's gardens evolving from strategy to personal philosophy. The transition from employer and employee to genuine partners occurred so gradually, neither acknowledged its completion until already accomplished. Victoria observed their growing connection with quiet satisfaction, occasionally sharing knowing glances with Monroe when the couple remained oblivious to their transparent feelings. Power seeks balance, she remarked cryptically during one such moment, in business and in heart. The proposal came not with dramatic gestures, but practical partnership. Julian presenting Rose with legal documents, transferring partial ownership of Blackwood Enterprises alongside a simple platinum band. Equal partners in all things, he offered, vulnerability evident in his usually confident demeanor. Rose's acceptance surprised no one, except perhaps Julian himself, who had prepared elaborate contingencies for rejection. The private ceremony in the mansion's chapel included only family and closest allies, Victoria beaming with maternal pride as ancient vows blended with modern commitments. The combined wedding and business announcement sent ripples through both underground and legitimate circles. Blackwood Cardelli Ventures publicly acknowledging Rose's leadership role alongside Julian's established authority. Former rivals approached with cautious respect, testing boundaries of the new power structure with careful diplomacy. The transformation from waitress to matriarch of an evolving empire completed a circle, begun with simple kindness to a disguised stranger. Rose stood on the mansion's terrace overlooking the city below, no longer an outsider looking in, but a guardian determining its future path. She hadn't pursued power. Kindness had brought power to her, and that made all the difference. Thank you all for following this story. If you're enjoying it, write in the comments where you're watching from, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the video, because your support is important for me to continue here.